Everyone joining us online, on YouTube, and across all our social media platforms, this is where the summit settles into its purpose. From here, it becomes more practical, it becomes thoughtful, it becomes about what we choose to build next. Builders will meet policymakers throughout the conversations that will be happening today. Developers will meet deployers. Ideas will meet execution. And as we move forward, we invite you to stay put, stay present in the conversation, whether you're here physically or joining us online. And you can do that through our social media platforms. Again, Cardano Africa Tech Summit on LinkedIn and CATS_Summit on X, formerly Twitter. Now, ladies and gentlemen, without much further ado, we move into the next part of the program, where we now shift from vision into application and from ideas into execution. And the first panel asks a very simple but important question. How do we move from blocks to solutions? And how do we move from experimentation to systems that actually work in the real world? Now, guiding this conversation is someone deeply involved in turning ecosystems into functioning organizations. Our moderator is the Interim Operations Director at Intersect. He is one of the original team members who helped build the organization from the ground up. Now, with over 8 years of experience across blockchain and Web3, his work focuses on scaling organizations, strengthening governance, and delivering real ecosystem value. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Nick Cook on stage. Now, Nick is joined by a diverse group of builders, thinkers, and practitioners. Our first panelist serves as a sustainability and innovation lead at the Cardano Foundation. His work focuses on building strategic partnerships across the development, humanitarian, and public sectors. He is deeply involved in advancing blockchain and enabled innovation aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals, and in supporting ecosystem-led funding initiatives such as Project Catalyst. Please help me welcome on stage Alex Maaza. Our next panelist is a cybersecurity and blockchain intelligence leader shaping Africa's technology landscape. He is the founder of AfricaHackon and brings over a decade of experience in security strategy, resilience, and blockchain intelligence. He has advised institutions across Africa and globally, helping organizations think more clearly about risk, trust, and emerging technologies. Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome on stage Dr. Bright. Of Anzens. He is helping pioneer what many are calling FinTech 2.0, combining real-time cross-border settlements with built-in governance and compliance on the Cardano blockchain. With over a decade of experience in payments and a career spanning traditional finance and crypto since 2016, he brings a practical perspective on bridging digital assets and the real-world financial systems. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome on stage Shantnoo Saxena. And now, ladies and gentlemen, our final panelist brings a critical lens at the intersection of peace, technology, and governance. She is a peace and technology expert, working across artificial intelligence, security, and policy. She is a PhD candidate and lecturer in peace and international studies at Daystar University, and the founder of AI for Peace Africa, where she leads African-driven initiatives advancing responsible AI for peace building, human security, and sustainable development across the continent. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome on stage Ms. Naomi Kilungo. All right, this is our panel. And the conversation will explore what it really takes to turn blockchain infrastructure into solutions that scale, solutions that serve the people, and systems that last. Nick, the conversation is yours.
Thank you, Philip. And thanks everyone for being here today. So as Philip said, my name's Nick Cook. I'm the Operations Director for Intersect and hosting your panel today. We have a fantastic panel for you, as has just been introduced. And we're talking a little bit about moving from blocks to solutions, and what we're really erring there at is a little bit of a discussion around real-world utility and how we move the conversation on to get towards real-world utility. Now, Cardano has positioned its expansion in Africa as a real priority in terms of the deployment of blockchain technology, and that's across a range of solutions from digital identity, educational credentials, real-world inclusion, right through to public sector innovation. So today we'll look at how we can push beyond some of those barriers and really advance the conversation and move things forward in this region. Everyone's been introduced to you, so I guess we'll dive straight in terms of questions. So I think my first question, if we talk a little bit about some of the barriers that currently exist today, I'll come to you, Alex. So from your perspective, what do you see currently as the biggest barrier to Cardano scaling from a solution perspective in the African region, and what can we do to overcome that?
Thanks, Nick. Hello, everybody. My name is Alex Maaza. Like our colleagues from the Kenyan government, I got a little bit of an upgrade in my job title. I'm now Ecosystem and Enterprise Growth Lead at the Cardano Foundation, and actually this allows me to take a bit more of a macro view in terms of challenges and opportunities. And, you know, I want to do two things. Firstly, acknowledge the opportunity and the success that is on the continent, rather than look at the challenges which we've spoken about at length in the past. I think the biggest thing is the fact that as an African, I'm pretty old, I'm 31, the median age is 19. 80% of developers on the continent are under the age of 25, which is a massive, massive opportunity. And if we focus on the success stories of the top 5 digital economies in Africa, namely Kenya, Morocco, South Africa, Nigeria, and Egypt, you have a 25% year-on-year growth in terms of developer talent. This means something like 700,000 developers were around in 2021. We're around 3.5 million developers in those economies alone today. And in Kenya in particular, you have 33% year-on-year growth. So the secretary wasn't just saying things, the data doesn't lie. This is, you know, a really exciting opportunity. Additionally to this, you have really significant connectivity growth, up from 181 million connected people in the early 2010s to close to 650 million people today, and at the current pace going up to 1.1 billion in 2029, thinking that Africa's population is 1.5 billion. And then lastly, I think one of the biggest opportunities that I see here, we saw this at Africa Tech Summit, is payments. $205 billion worth of on-chain transactions in 2024-2025 from Africa. 43% of these are stablecoin transactions. So these are people transacting stable value, not necessarily looking at crypto from a speculative perspective, but actually from utility, and hopefully we can speak about this today.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. And I think to your point there as well, certainly here in Kenya, with the evolution over the last couple of decades of things like M-Pesa, there's a massive tipping point, certainly here, in terms of you have probably 1 or 2 generations of people now who have ever transacted digitally. So the barriers of actual usage across Africa seem to be far lower, actually, than some other regions around the world. And actually, I mean, Shantnoo will talk in a minute on one of the things where he had a transaction just today through pure discussion with someone in a taxi, which we'll get onto. But if I come to you, Naomi, when we talk about the ecosystem, where do you see currently the biggest gaps between actual blockchain technology and then real-world usage on the ground in communities?
Thank you so much. I think the real problem is in awareness of the situation that we have in Africa, especially the fragility index that we have in the whole continent. Currently, Africa has over 58% conflicts compared to the world. Like, that's the percentage we have when it comes to actual conflicts, active conflicts. Not talking about border conflicts, not talking about ethnic conflicts that do exist. So we are, in a nutshell, we are almost at 75%. So those are real problems that we have. But in most contexts, I may say we are not in a place that we really understand the problem that we have, which is a glaring problem when it comes to conflict. So taking actual solutions into these communities will take us first to understand what we are experiencing. For instance, we've had cases where mainstream organizations like World Food Program has been able to do that, to actualize some of these solutions in Somalia, Mercy Corps in DRC, in conflict areas. But as individual young people in Africa, the aspect of understanding the context to build specific solutions for Sudan, for South Sudan, for DRC, Bukavu, Goma, for Mali, for Chad, for Niger, and all these places that are having conflicts, we need to create awareness of what the actual problem is. And just to add on that, when we look at the war technology upgrades within the last 10 years, we're talking around 10 to 20 billion additions in the last 10 years up to 2025 December, with only peace tech investments 0.5 to 10 billion, which is even smaller because it's only the international organizations that are contributing to that, and only few people that are being involved, meaning there's no understanding, as we do have in fintech, in health tech, in agri-tech. So it's a problem of understanding our contexts and our problems. Yeah.
Perfect, thank you. So if we move on to talking a little bit about scaling, I think I'll come to you, Shantnoo. Now, you run a very successful company in the Cardano space, and part of your current roadmap and expansion plans and strategy involve, moving yourself certainly into the African market, which is something that you're currently working on. So it'd be great to get a bit of an insight in what that looks like, why you're doing that, and how that's progressing.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Sorry, I've got a sore throat, but I got introduced to cryptocurrencies actually from Africa, specifically in Kenya in 2016 with a then startup, which ended up becoming a global company. What I learned back in the day is Africa shouldn't be looked as one country. Every country should be looked individually because the dynamics, the regulatory aspects, the population, the way they transact, their mindsets is very, very different. Kenya is leading the way. And my intention to build products and services into Kenya, specifically starting from Kenya, is the acceptance to newer technology is more evident as compared to the rest of the world, not just Africa, but to the rest of the world. If we look at M-Pesa that started 20 years ago, and it changed the way people moved money back in the day, almost 20 years ago. Alipay, WeChat Pay, Grab Pay, and various other pays that we see today actually are inspired by what M-Pesa did 18 years ago. Our intention to build in Africa, a bit of a background, Encryptus's original idea was to integrate Web3 and Web2 together. And this is the journey we started 4 years ago. Back in the day, not many institutions, not many governments were ready to listen what we were trying to achieve. The cabinet secretary mentioned earlier about the remittance cost to be at 6.54%. Actually, that's the World Bank numbers that say 6.54% is the cost for sending remittance into Africa. Africa receives 1/7 of the remittance in the world. If remittances are about $750 billion, 100 billion comes to Africa, and to be more precise, 7% is contributed by Kenya alone. Now, today, to the end customer, we help them move money at a flat fee of 1.5%. If anybody integrates into our network, that is what they get. But the idea is not about us, but what is it we are doing at a global level that would help. Combination of, we are a company that consumes Cardano as a blockchain, and we move money anywhere in the world on a real-time basis without touching the SWIFT network directly to the end user's bank account or e-wallets. And this is where the scope of or integration of payments in blockchain is extremely critical. USDA is an extension. We all talk about stablecoins. Stablecoins will change the world. And in my opinion, there is a lot that has to be done, because the cost to acquire a stablecoin today in an emerging market can anywhere between 2 to 10%. So in reality, what are we solving by integrating payments and blockchain? If we are doing exactly the same thing, let's say the top card providers, they make a news today and they say that they're utilizing blockchain to make settlements. How is it that the end customer, which is the merchant who is accepting the card transaction, is getting benefited from that? How am I, as a customer who is using my card today to pay for taxis and services, is getting benefited from that? Because if I end up paying 16% for my card transaction versus what we'll be announcing this pretty soon, later today, but all I utilized was a stable coin, converted my stable coin into Kenyan shilling instantly at a zero fee, and paid for my taxi using M-Pesa. And this is what the users are looking for. I do not have Kenyan IDs and stuff, but we are connected with banks and financial institutions locally.
Thanks, Shantnoo. And just before we move on, it would be great to hear your story about coming here today and how you paid for your taxi, because I think that's a real feel-good factor.
Yeah, it's a feel-good factor that we are not just talking about this is how we will change the world, this is the future going to be looking like. We are actually on the ground working with regulated licensed partners, as Mr. Oscar mentioned earlier. So non-compliance is not the area that at least we are looking at. We want to make sure we work with partners who are on the ground. They do the work related to the regulations, and we support them in building the ecosystem.
Perfect, thank you. You talked and erred on regulation there a little bit, so coming to you, Dr. Bright. What, in terms of African governments and organizations and governors, needs to be done in terms of infrastructure, policy and frameworks to really allow blockchain technology to scale sustainably?
Thank you very much for that. So let's get back to reality. Kenya is a mobile-first country. If you look at Africa, everybody's moving mobile, and we are actually embracing that very, very easily and very, we're able to use it very nice and easy without thinking too much about what is the technology behind it. So if we are looking at that, that means the government also needs to come to the same level to be able to make sure that we have a very good infrastructure to be able to run any kind of solution or technology that is coming in. So connectivity is the first thing. Energy is the other part of things. And being able to easily integrate into the kind of technology we already have on the government's part of things needs to be thought about. Right now, you can do anything on mobile. From using M-Pesa has become the cloud part of things. Everybody's building on top of that. If you look at Kenya revenue authorities, they're collecting revenue fees from all over the place using mobile. If you come to payment for electricity, if you're sending money to people. So it's becoming something that we need to make sure we can blend the two very easily and nice and easy. And just what you talked about, just to move on from what you're talking about, is the fact that we need to also enable a lot of sandboxes to be able to be creative, because people are scared to build. They're saying, if I build, nobody's going to accept it. If I build, the government might shut it down tomorrow and say, no, what you build is not according to the regulation. That's why a lot of education also comes in. But if we go to, not to bash any government person here, I'm also in government partly though. You go to some places and you try to describe blockchain to a basic member of parliament or somewhere else. It's difficult. You all know. Because you have to explain blockchain. Now go to rural areas, you want to explain to them basic blockchain technology. You go to Masai Mara, you want to explain basic blockchain technology. I saw somebody, I don't know who it was, who went to Masai Mara and started trying to teach basic blockchain usage of how they can benefit from that. And
they were wondering like, wow, we never knew that's possible. That transparency, that ease of use, that interoperability, hey, it's a difficult word, huh? it's not something, so we need a lot of awareness as well to be able to make sure we're doing more workshops, we're having this kind of conversation, we're letting everybody become an ambassador of being able to understand or explain basic blockchain technology and the usage, but especially to government, so that when they're making the regulations and trying to bring the policies on board, we're able to actually adopt them without any difficulty. Right now, the biggest blockers have always been, 2-3 years ago, when the first person to actually get the cryptocurrency blockchain solution on the sandbox at CMA, it took a year. It took a year of back and forth. It took a year of conversations. It took a year of people getting to understand even why is it this. I personally went to some of the government offices to tell them exactly why we need to actually start adopting blockchain technology. But the first reaction was, if we're not there yet, and I'm like, it's because they're scared. But if we don't do a lot of awareness, which means a lot of volunteers from us, from this room, to go and talk to this institute.
At CATS this week, Rejuve Biotech is bringing our flagship AI
DJ, please assist me, take it down. We will allow them to complete their panel discussion in the next 15 to 20 minutes, then we'll keep the program running. Back to you, Dr. Bright. I think you're the one on the microphone before we went off.
Apologies, Dr. Bright. Hopefully you can continue now without having to shout too loud.
Yes.
We're back in the game.
Yeah, so I was talking about the policies part of things, and one element that is missing is being able to make sure that we have, the legal frameworks are clear for digital assets, for smart contracts, and what people are building. I happen to work with the Honorable Attorney General, and she actually asked that question some time back where somebody was trying to bring digital assets, regulatory processes, and she asked them, what's the digital asset? And everybody froze. So understanding that and making sure they understand whatever it is really important. Last but not the least is the builder ecosystem. There's so many. I think it's for the wedding.
Wasn't me.
So the builder ecosystem is really huge, it's really strong. And I was discussing with a few people outside the fact that people keep on building, but nobody ever gets to realize what they're building. So people have very beautiful ideas. Hackathons are existing. This is making it very theoretical. And all the hacking that people get to do in 72 hours, 48 hours are nice. But where are they? Because you get people excited, or you get young people, quote unquote, excited about $2,000, $5,000, they split that money and project is dead. So we need to also make sure we're able to follow up on all of these details. Otherwise, we keep having brilliant ideas. We try to do them, the project dies, and then after a few months, we hear another company somewhere in a different part of the world has built exactly the same thing, that we get mad that we are not moving. So that support, the mentorship, being able to actually get infrastructure, legal framework, policy across border policies to be able to make sure that Ethiopia and Kenya should not be fighting about policies of how to be able to do cross-border transfer. I was talking to you a few minutes ago, and I saw the app he has. You should get everybody to be on that app. So simple, user experience, user interface. But if somebody's building and they don't know the basics of even what, how do you call it, the business aspect of things, then they'll always just build and leave it there. But even that ease of use of application it's something that we need to keep on thinking about. Yeah, so that's what I would say about scaling to what you're building.
Yeah, perfect, thank you. And I think one of the USPs in terms of the Cardano community, certainly here in Africa, is it's not just about trying to get people in as developers, it's about trying to build a community first. So you don't have to be technically skilled. You can come in and find your way, whether it's in governance or non-technical related things, or you could choose to pursue some elements of the technology itself. But for Cardano here and globally, it's more about building the community first and letting the people in the community find out where they want to be. So that could be supporting things like policy, it could be supporting technology, it could be supporting kind of real-world utilization. There's a place for everybody. And so building that community is really critical first, and then letting people find out within the context of the Cardano world where they actually want to spend their time and where they want to spend their efforts. But
people are always scared, though. They always think it's all about coding. That's the thing. So we need to actually stop thinking about is that Cardano does not mean you have to be a coder. If you understand policy, bring it. If you understand how to write business cases, bring it. So I think we need to get a lot more awareness to people to know that you don't have to be a coder, but understand the basics is really important.
Yeah, and I think you're 100% right. And to part of what you touched on there, talking about kind of incubation and projects, it'd be great, Alex, if you can give us a bit of an insight into the great work that you and the Cardano Foundation have been doing with the United Nations Development Program, because there's some really, really interesting stuff in there.
Yeah, sure. And I just want to follow on this. I view people during the break were asking me about, Cardano as a company, Cardano as a technology. What I view it is as a digital nation that has a social and technical infrastructure, right? And it's governed by its ADA holders, its token holders, its validators, its builders, etc. And Cardano is interesting to build on because the community gets to decide how the technical infrastructure is updated, what kinds of parameters the technical infrastructure is running with, how we spend a 1.5, 1.7 billion ADA treasury, which includes, funding events like this, which is a non-technical thing, as much as funding the next, L2 upgrade like Laos. I want to also take a little bit of what Dr. Bright and Naomi were saying in terms of sensing real problems and bringing real solutions to tangible things. WADA has done an excellent job in doing a hackathon across 12 different countries, getting 1,200 different people, not focusing on the tech, but focusing on the problem first, and then building the tech. I believe 12 of these hackers are here today. And when we have conversations with the United Nations Development Program, and I'd encourage you to just Google UNDP blockchain, and you should find a report that I'll be referring to, where UNDP came to us and they said, look, we're not interested in doing fancy projects that look nice on paper but don't actually scale. Our own principals within the UN system don't understand blockchain technology. It's very difficult for them to understand this. Same thing comes with more older regulators, government officials, etc. They want to see use cases that are real, that are tangible, and that are scalable. And so, again, thanks to the Cardano Treasury, of course, the Cardano Foundation, my job was to foster those relationships, but it wouldn't have been without the community, without the community's treasury, that we would have been able to bootstrap the UNDP's SDG Blockchain Accelerator. Ben from UNDP is here doing a session later today if you want to find out about it. But essentially what it did is it allowed UNDP, that has over 170 different country offices, to go and do research with their local partners about what is some of the actual problems that are on the ground and could very important word, could be solved by blockchain, and then match them to solution builders, some of which are African, some of which are coming from other parts of the world. And so what we've seen is close to 20, or just above 20 different solutions being built out in the first and second cohorts, and we're hoping that we can scale that up. And this is everything from carbon credits, and other types of solutions. Let me quickly refer to a few that are Africa-based, so African solutions for African problems. The fantastic thing is that in this particular case, these were not a Kenyan startup for a Kenyan problem. This would have been a Tanzanian startup for a Moroccan problem, and vice versa. So you have a national carbon credit registry with Talo, looking at 50,000 credits as a pilot in Tanzania, transparent electricity metering by Green Plus in Zanzibar, financing trees in Burkina Faso, market pathways for smallholder farmers in Angola, so on and so forth in Nigeria and Malawi. The most exciting part about all of this is not only market access in terms of African solutions to African problems. The two Kenyan alumni from this program, which are here today, so CladFi as well as Creative Operations, they actually bring African solutions to global problems, where they were testing the solutions not in Africa, but actually in Georgia and in Bangladesh. So this is really a fantastic opportunity to see through UN agencies and their networks of real-life sensing of real problems, how we can adapt Cardano technology to this. And now what they've done is they've put this as a compendium of a 50 use case report that now makes it easier to communicate to UN agencies, governments, because of the legitimacy of the organization. And so we're hoping to see that we can, hopefully scale this beyond the continent, beyond these use cases, and actually take these pilots, the successful ones, into production.
Yeah, perfect, thanks, Alex. So, touching on some of the solutions that kind of Alex mentioned, from your perspective, Naomi, how do we ensure that these are inclusive and accessible to SMEs, to young people, to underserved communities to get involved with, rather than just be early adopters?
So thank you. When we talk about inclusion, and let me stay in conflict contexts, and let's pick a case of Somalia, which we've seen several organizations being involved in creating, using blockchain to create solutions in those particular places, and one of them touching the digital wallet and just eliminating the brokers that like pocket money for refugees. And that's actual solution that you're including everyone, because now you're not using another party, a third party, to reach out to the community or to actual person that has the problem or community. And we've seen several cases also in the farming areas where we've had early warnings, where in Mali, in Kenya, Tana River, northern Kenya, Ethiopia, where we've seen cases of actual community engagement and inclusion when it comes to preventing resource conflict through early warnings in peace, in peace tech. So inclusion is possible, but I remember what the secretary talked about today. It's intentionality, because the seclusion also is intentional. Marginalization is intentional. And I believe the reason why some of these areas still extend over decades with conflicts is because the inclusion part was not done in creating actually or designing tech solutions, or even actual solutions that are not tech per se, because when we talk about solving conflicts, we'll not rely purely on tech. We have also other mechanisms of resolving these particular conflicts. And when we talk about inclusion, it's all the way in the peace building process. So it's all the way from diagnosis where we are able to do conflict analysis, which includes mapping, collection of data, which includes identities, and that's where blockchain comes in. We need trust, accountability. We need to have secured information for us to create, and it should be correct to create particular solutions. So from conflict analysis, we move to even conflict resolution, conflict management, in peacekeeping processes, peace building, where humanitarian sectors come in, logistics, and all these are places where the actual community and areas where the actual community can be involved in these particular areas. And just to add on that, as I finished, the Kenyan market when it comes to peace tech, for me has been a very hard ground, and especially with what Dr. Bright was saying, the aspect of the government agency understanding what is it that this particular, when you talk about AI for peace, what are you talking about? But like right now, AI for Peace Africa, we're running a full year program among the youth from hotspot areas where we usually have problems during elections and campaign period, and training them to use AI and to build AI for peace. So, and that is to decampaign disinformation, misinformation, all these other areas. That is the context of Kenya. Then we move to context of Sudan, where there is a lot of misinformation and disinformation, especially with what is happening there. So, and being able to identify what is the fake news, what are the facts, and do fact checking for researchers in peace and academia and other areas and policymakers. So it's a whole process, it's a whole chain where everyone can be involved, but it is intentionality that we need, which and the intentionality part comes with, of course, the root thing that we talked about, the understanding of complexity of the actual problem. And there is an advantage for Cardano and the rest of a bit bigger institutions, because there is resource to reach the ground and collect the data. So, but startups may have a problem of inclusion because of the capacity and the reach out capability in these particular areas.
Yeah, thanks, Naomi. I think that's some great insights, certainly from on the ground here and regionally wide. I'm mindful of time, so it would be great if we could get a 60-minute sum up from each of our panelists on what you actually think in terms of the success for Cardano in Africa looks like in 2030. So I guess start with you, Alex, if that's okay.
So it's good that you mentioned 2030. That's not only the year that the SDGs are supposed to be, successful with, but more importantly, Cardano Vision 2030 is where we as an ecosystem have collaboratively decided we want to get to. I think this is a very important thing. Cardano is the only blockchain in the world that allows its community, and with that I mean builders, developers, people in Africa, people in Europe, people wherever in the world, to decide, as a blockchain ecosystem, as a digital nation, we want to get there. These are the KPIs we want to hit, and this is maybe how we want to do it. And I think for me, the exciting part about what this means for Africa is some of the workshops that are going to be happening here today to turn what Vision 2030 is into what are we prioritizing in 2026 and 2027. What does that mean for the continent, and how can we actually push a narrative where and an action where the incentives for Cardano and the African community of Cardano and beyond are aligned. And I think that's a really important job that we need to do collaboratively here today and online.
I think I'll jump onto that to talk about the transparency. I mean, Cardano already, by default, have that transparency that people need to understand. And the blockchain technology, for adoption, means we need to also protect consumers as to the fact that they need to know. They shouldn't be scared saying that they're giving their data out is going to go somewhere else. And being able to make people innovate means there has to be regulation. And the regulatory process is not to block people from innovation. It's supposed to be able to get people to actually have some sort of guardrails, but promote transparency for people, for a lot of how do you call it, solutions to be built. I know we have a lot of good builders. We have a lot of talent in the country, the continent, and the only way we can do that is by collaboration. That's something which we fight a lot about. People think no idea is new. It might be new to you, but you're not that unique. Well, you can be unique in a different way of doing it, but if you collaborate with somebody, you're going to move faster. So that transparency, the regulation part of things, and collaboration is what I think we need to actually focus on, especially collaboration, to be able to see a better outcome. Yeah.
I think what really needs to happen here is I can talk about this as a project. We would need Cardano Foundation, IOG, and Emorgo to come together and help projects build on Cardano, which requires also a combination of developers who will build products and services, a voice that would educate the institutions and the governments about Cardano as a blockchain and how it supports the country and the ecosystem. Projects like us and many others building compliant, I can talk about again about us, which is on and off ramps. At the end of the day, a user is always looking for a tangible product or a service. If I consume blockchain, what do I get in return? So participation of the community, participations of the governments and policymakers would play a big role in getting Cardano adoption on the ground. Thanks.
I think what should be done is to match the numbers. Not per se matching, because by 2030 we may not be able to match the cost of conflict versus the cost of peace. And I know Cardano has the capacity to bring in different stakeholders that are very specific in those particular regions and be able to work with them. When looking at the cost of conflict right now in Sudan, for instance, because AI for Peace Africa, among other, we work with other agencies, and now Cardano, when you look at the cost of drones right now, automated weapons, lethal weapons that are being supplied into the region, I think one of the things that should be done is good research. That exposes the gaps in the costs. There is the pivot is not balanced. It's tilting. So I know Cardano is able to try to balance, even if we will not be at par in terms of balancing the aspects of resolving the conflicts, not per se really resolving 100%, but contributing to peace through technology. And they are onboarding a peace tech ecosystem, which is not common in the African context among the young innovators, to be able to build these particular systems that are very specific. Thank you.
Thank you, and thanks to our panel today. And just before we close, I think a final few observations that I've made this week through being at the summit over the last few days is there's been a huge amount of engagement and curiosity and people really wanting to get involved in the community that is Cardano. So certainly anybody who hasn't joined Intersect, shameless plug, please come and do so and get involved in the governance of Cardano. Everyone has a role to play, and as we were saying earlier, there is a role literally for everybody in every part of the ecosystem. And just before I close, I wanted to extend a huge thank you to both WADA and Lido Nation, who've laid on this great event, and without whom this wouldn't be happening today. So it goes to show the strength of the African Cardano community and the great level of activation that those companies are doing on the ground across the African region to really bolster, grow, educate, and foster inclusion for people into the Cardano community. So thank you, panel, for your expertise. I'm sure each one of these people will be kicking around for the rest of the day. today. So if you have questions, do come and find them and ask them and quiz them as to where your place might be in the ecosystem if you haven't already. And thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much. Let's appreciate them one more time as they take their place on the podium for a photo op.